Hi there. So, this time I have another entertaining thing to share with you. But I'm not going to tell you a story. I'll just tell you about some of the folklore that has developed related to an Ozark Howler. It's interesting. Uh, I find this one particularly entertaining because for as much as we can tell, it started as a prank. It was it seems to have been anyway. No real proof of this being a true thing. But it seems to be pretty clear that this started as a student prank from one of the University of Arkansas's students who decided that they were going to make up a monster and then report it and see if they could pull the wool over all of the cryptozoologists' eyes. And it seems to have worked really well. But that's not the end of the story. But I'm not going to tell you the story. Instead, I will share with you that there are quite a few people that fancy themselves cryptozoologists that are probably very angry with me saying any of the things that I just said because that will give you the impression that this is completely made up and it was never a real thing at all. Because there are a lot of people that vehemently believe that this is a real monster. And I can't say it's not. Why specifically is actually entertaining, in my opinion. I was joking around and talking about some of the more entertaining things that I'd learned in my research with my parents a while back. And I started sculpting this monster that's supposed to look like a bear, feline, dog combined thing, perhaps, but with horns. But it's hard to say exactly what it looks like because most people have never seen it. But people have heard this thing howling in this very unique and very terrifying sound late at night. So therefore, it gets its name as the Ozark Howler, being from the Ozark Mountains, of course. So I was telling my parents about this and kind of joking around about, haha, here's one that's actually a made up thing. But I hadn't gotten around to the it's a made up thing or anything. I just started talking to them about the creature that I started making. And my mom goes, "Oh, I know that one." I'm like, "Wait, what?" My mother, of course, oh gosh, she was already in her 70s when I told her about that. So you can probably imagine how net savvy she really isn't. And she doesn't even do email anymore. She doesn't do any kind of online anything at all. She gets frustrated with me trying to help her connect with people she wants to connect with through Facebook and refuses to do that either. So you can probably imagine the fact that this is not somebody who learned anything, even subconsciously, through the internet about this creature. So it absolutely floored me when she said she actually knew one of the creatures I was talking about already. So instead of explaining the whole thing to her, I asked her to explain it to me. So what she said was that she didn't really have any real description of what the thing was, what it looked like, because everybody that had talked about it was only saying that you hear this thing at night. This is a very common thing that you hear, this misidentified sounds. You can get a lot of stories from that kind of thing, of course. For instance, people very frequently hear the wild cats, bobcats, and mountain lions, for instance, and they'll hear these things, even coyotes, and start saying that they sound like women screaming. And it is terrifying. There's some really bizarre sounds that a lot of the wildlife can make. And if you're not familiar with it, you're not really comfortable with hearing this kind of thing. that they can be terrifying, and you might imagine them to be something completely different. Not to say that a mountain lion, it can't be a terrifying thing in itself. Bobcats too. They're pretty nasty to customers to mess with, and you don't ever want to get on the wrong side of a large cat. But the Ozark Howler, as she said, was something that people had been familiar with the sound of bobcats and, owl hoots and different sounds. And owls can make some terrifying things. Screech owls. Whew, look that one up. That's scary sounding stuff at night. But there's a lot of stuff. But she was talking about people that were very familiar with all of these things. They were living in kind of rural areas for quite a long time, grew up with mountain lions in the area before they became so thinly populated as they are throughout the United States. And technically, if I remember correctly, they're said to not live in Missouri at all anymore, even though I know darn well that's not true. I've seen them. So that's not a thing, but yet they're familiar with these sounds, of course. So when somebody says that they heard something dramatically different and terrifying that is already familiar with these sounds of bobcats and screech owls and all this stuff, that means something more than somebody like me that doesn't hear that very often and go, oh my gosh, I'm camping and that was terrifying. That wouldn't mean as much. But if you are living with this kind of thing all the time, it means a lot more. So when my mother said that she had heard about this creature that nobody knows what it is exactly, but it makes completely different sounds from any of the creatures that were known in the regions, that made me sit up and take some notice. So obviously, if this was a prank, this student seems to have happened to accidentally tap into a cultural phenomenon that they may not have even realized that they had been exposed to before. They may not know that they were actually talking about something that people had actually talked about before, or they just happened to tap into the same fear that other people talk about in folklore, and just happens to be from the same area. And the naming seems to be weirdly, ironically, the same kind of thing, to be recognizable, at least by my mother, to know exactly the same kind of tales that this is talking about. So I can't say it's not a real thing. This one's one of my favorites because it was supposed to be, more or less proven to be just a lie. And yet I specifically have found an example or two that my dad even said, hey, that sounds familiar. Yeah. But even accidentally, I've found evidence of people knowing about this thing that would have no access to the prank version of it at all. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. It wasn't my favorite sculpture that I've made, but I've been making some way cooler things since then, and that's what I'll be sharing with you soon. So that's a pretty good segue for me to shut up and move on to another video. So as the embers die down behind me on a chilly October night on Halloween, I'll sign off. It's not quite night yet, but probably by the time I post any of this. But I'll sign off. Thank you again for joining me. Subscribe again. I know I keep saying it. I'm sorry. That's just how you build up a new channel, and I don't want to annoy you with it. Sorry. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me for these. I really enjoy it. Hopefully you're enjoying it as well. If not so much, thanks for sticking through to the end of this one. Hopefully I'll find some more entertaining things for you in the next videos that you'll see eventually. Thanks again. I'll see you soon.